Hi, welcome to another devlog. Only this one isn't about AAA Simulator. Instead, I want to tell you about something completely different, a game I've been working on for the past couple of years. I want to tell you what it's about, how I made it, and where you can play it. It's called Magehunter Phoenix Flame, and it's being published by Choice of Games. If you don't know, Choice of Games is one of the biggest names in interactive fiction, which is a genre of games played entirely in text with no graphics. Choice of Games specializes in novels where you choose your own path through the story. It's kind of like those old choose your own adventures, or the give yourself goosebumps books, but way more detailed and responsive. And where those books were aimed at kids, these games are for more mature audiences. Magehunter specifically is aimed a little older than YA, in the NA or New Adult category. There is some killing in the game and the player has a choice of 5 romance partners, but the romance never gets any steamier than kissing. Choice of Games is a great publisher to work with and they have a dedicated fan base. I know this because Magehunter is my second game with them, and I've already had several fans of the first tell me that they either love the series or that I'm not living up to the standards of the first book. In my opinion, Magehunter is much better than the first, but fans will be fans, am I right? The first game was called Battle Mage Magic by Mail, and Magehunter is an indirect sequel in the same world, but it's a completely standalone game. This one takes place several generations after a war with battle mages, and the kingdom's been ruled by an oppressive mage class ever since. The Mage Hunters, or just Hunters for short, are a resistance movement that's in a constant power struggle with the mages, and that's where you come in. As the player, you take on the role of a new hunter stalking the streets at night and using arcane technology to advance the resistance. This arcane technology is called Slip Flame, and it comes in 3 forms: Brutal Flame, Living Flame, and Silent Flame. You can use Brutal Flame to change the physical properties of objects. You could imbue your sword with flame, or multiply the weight of an object 100-fold. Brutal Flame is great for making bold displays of power. Living Flame lets you steal the essence of a living thing. This could mean something like thickening your skin with the bark of a particularly tough tree, or stealing someone's life essence to make them weaker and yourself stronger. Finally, Silent Flame lets you do anything sneaky or stealthy. You can use it to make bombs that will cast a deafening silence in an area, or you can use it for puppet darts, which allow you to control weak-minded individuals. Aside from Slip Flame, you also have several other stats at your disposal, like physical power, agility, and leadership. You also have several opposing stats, which are a representation of your personality on a spectrum from one to the other. These stats are the results of your choices, like everything else, and determine whether you're a liberator or a peacekeeper, whether you're obedient or rebellious, and whether you're intellectual or adventurous. But it doesn't end there. You can develop relationships with several characters, and they have stats connected to them too. With this many stats, the story becomes an RPG engine, which allows your choices to be incredibly responsive and consequential. They're constantly being adjusted and tested to give you different outcomes throughout the story, to the point that there are a huge number of variations in each playthrough. But there are still limitations, and since this is a devlog, I want to give you a look at those limitations as well as my process in making this game. One problem is known as splitting the story. If you give players true freedom, they'll be able to choose a truly infinite number of paths. So a designer needs to decide how many paths to open up to the player while still maintaining the illusion of freedom. And that's not always an easy decision. To put this in more concrete terms, let's say you want to give the player the option to be either good or evil. In this incredibly simple example, it's tempting to just write 2 paths, one good path and one evil path. But if you do that from start to finish, you actually just made 2 games instead of 1. You've split the story. In Magehunter, I've solved this by using what's called a branch and bottleneck structure. The story splits off into several paths, but those paths are eventually weaved back into the main story again. Even with the branch and bottleneck structure, Magehunter follows the threads of the side paths alongside the main story from about the midpoint of the game, and it splits completely at the endings, but the stats save a lot of work here. If I just tried to manually keep track of all the player's choices, it would make an infinite number of variables for me to keep track of, and I would be writing if-else statements for eternity. Instead, I can check the player's stats and see which ending to give them, and which variations of that ending. In Magehunter, this allows me to have 10 main endings with 8 different romance outcomes, depending on how you want to count it. This is still a lot of work. The game is over 300,000 words, and there are only 13 chapters. That's like me writing a couple Stephen King novels, but you reading a novella as a result. But this novella is replayable, and since it's replayable and since choices matter so much, it allows me to provide several different perspectives, while at the same time playing with the ideas of morality and right and wrong. You can follow the path of the mage hunters and try to be the best hunter you can be, or you can explore what the people of the city have to say, or another hunter faction, or even your enemies, the mages. It takes that idea I mentioned earlier of having a good and evil path and turns it on its head. I wanted to explore the idea that there are multiple different ways of being good or evil, and entire systems of morality that justify those paths. But in the end, it's also a video game. An action-adventure where you get to run around the streets at night fighting mages and doing cool things with arcane technology. And there are a bunch of characters you can meet and flirt with, become enemies, or anything in between. If that sounds like something you like, you can get it on Apple, Android, and Steam. And I've left the Steam link in the description. It should be out now, so go get some Black Friday shopping done. And I hope you enjoy it. Thanks for watching.